Yeah, it's in the business of probably the worst.
Well, yeah,
For
there's
students
those.
in the entire village. Really? But they have a phenomenal view. Looking out over the golf course? No, looking out towards the west and northwest. It's really, really good. You know, I go for hunting at
7:32.
All right. It's 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. Let me call the village board to order for Monday, September 12th, 2022. Candy, take the roll.
Belo,
Here.
Glish,
Here.
Jacobson, here. Peterson,
Here.
Van Campen,
Here.
and Wunsch.
Here.
And Beshen is absent.
All right. 3 is approval of August 15th, 2022 village board meeting minutes. I'll take a motion in a second if we're willing. Amanda and Jenna. Any discussion? Anybody, any changes? Okay, see none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I'd like, if the board's okay, to move 6 up the consent agenda. There's someone here from Quick Trip that's part of the consent agenda. If we don't mind, let's take 6. So 6 is the consent agenda, staff recommendation, motion to approve the consent agenda items, which is A through D on the agenda. Somebody's willing to make a motion in a second. Derek, I see his hand, and Amanda. Any discussion, anybody?
I guess I'm unclear. If someone is here to discuss item D.
I don't
Of
think,
the
Phil,
consent-
she's just here. So we
Oh.
didn't want to make her wait.
I understand.
Yeah.
I thought there was.
No.
Pardon me.
Correct. Yep, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just don't have to, so they don't have to wait around.
Right.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Otherwise, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're done with 6. All right, let's go back up. We'll go up to 4. What? You're done. You're welcome. All right, 4 is public appearance, comments, and communication. Presentation of the 2022 financial management plan by Ellers. Dave, right?
Thank you. Didn't realize I was going to be so early on the agenda. Appreciate it. So I came this afternoon thinking that I was just presenting the governmental side, and Brian Raymer, who does our utilities portion of this and is helping you with your rate study, let me know after lunch that I was also presenting his. So I'll be doing a little higher level stuff on his, and if there's really detailed questions on the utility portion of the financial management plan and I'm unable to answer them, then I'll take those back to Brian and we'll get you answers as quick as possible. I'm about this deep on utilities and he's a lot deeper, so. I think we'll start out with the one that has a memorandum. I tried to make this a little bit more condensed as far as the presentation. Hopefully it won't take as much time. You'll have more time for answers. I know that I think I spent about 45 minutes in front of you last year and you probably got tired of hearing me talk. So thought I'd try to find a little more condensed version. So the memo you have in front of you really kind of highlights the things that are in the plan. The first part really kind of talks about the fact that we did more of a 10-year plan this time. I think it was important for the village board to kind of take a look out into the future. I know last year when I was here, there was some significant utility projects that needed to be considered, but because we were only doing a 5-year, that didn't seem to capture everything that we really wanted to see. So we went into this year and we did a 5-year plan for you to kind of give you a longer look at what's going on. Obviously, this is not a static document, so if things change, and they will, you'll just be moving things around, but this is kind of what staff's best guess as far as the next 10 years would be. The first part of the document, and I have the page numbers of the full document as well on this, so if you decide you want to go deeper in tonight, I can do that as well. Really, the thing we like to start out with is like your current debt profile. And so, you know, looking at the graphs, the part that really demonstrates where your current debt profile is that red bar, along with a little bit of the yellow, which is the TID support that we actually give because a couple of the TIFs are completely performing and paying for their debt. So really, when you look at the profile of the existing debt, you'll see there's a blip, and really what that was is that was really our first year of taking on some of your significant projects like the library. So that kind of set us up for the rest of the plan, and as you can see, and this comes up a little bit later in the document, that green line really is kind of demonstrating where we're going over the next 10 years according to the plan that's in front of you. We kind of took the stance of, you know, like last year we came in here and we showed you 5 years. We modeled it to have the same tax rate each year. But really what that ended up doing is kind of making things a little bit crazy, where I had really big debt payments in the beginning just to get up to this static number for a tax rate to kind of hold it steady. So the preferred way, because you have such an aggressive capital plan, was to come in here and basically step up your tax rate to get to where we could afford all the projects that are in here. I think you know, basically Brian had the same message, that you have a fairly aggressive CIP. You have a lot of building projects. You have some pretty significant projects in the utilities as well, and so that really leads to a fairly dramatic increase in both the taxes and the tax rate. You know, I'll get a little bit more to the future projects in a little while, but you know, as far as right now, where we were at 12/31 of 21, actually probably right after the borrowing, I think this actually might be even as of 22, you have $42 million worth of general obligation debt. The debt payments go over the 2023 through 2042. Some of that debt payments are actually paid for by other funding sources, such as the water utility still has some, geo debt, sewer. Some of it's paid by impact fees. The TIDs have some debt, and so there are certain amounts that are paid back by other funds. And then that, once those are subtracted off, that gets us to how much we're actually having the tax levy pay for. And so the rest of the debt really ends up being about $33.7 million, which is covered by tax levy. Just a little further down the page is the debt capacity graph. And with everything that's in your plan, we get up to about a 70% of your debt capacity used. So just kind of defining what debt capacity is, if you're not familiar, that blue line is a line that actually is demonstrating 5% of your equalized value of the village. So the market value of the village multiplied by 5% is the top amount that you can ever borrow in general obligation debt. I've kind of put an arbitrary line at the 75% line. I know that staff is thinking that maybe that number needs to be more between 60 and 70, and so we're recommending that you take a look at having a little more stricter self-imposed policy, because that will also lead your CIP process. That'll help us kind of knock some tops off of some of the items and maybe move things to different years so things fit. The green line is what you have outstanding as of, you know, going through this plan. So you'll see that, you know, we basically hit a peak at about 70%, and then it starts coming down over time. And in most cases, I would say that would be the end of your project period. But really, the way that the plan is laid out, you actually hit these really large milestones, which I think finishes up with the fire station, and then really the projects kind of really back off to more of a normal or a reduced amount for a few years at the back end of the plan. So you do have some room to maneuver things around if that 70% isn't where you want to end up. Any questions on basically where you are as of today? Okay. So on the second page, really the next section in the report talks about your bond rating. And really, the village has a very good bond rating. You're a AA2 according to Moody's. If you're on the S&P scale, you're actually a AA straight out with no minuses or pluses. So you're really at a really good place. And really what AA means is that you have the capacity to meet your financial commitments or your obligations, and your ability to do that is very strong. The bond rating also considers economic, financial, management, and debt conditions of the village when determining that rating. You'll see in the report itself that I've basically laid out not only all the sections that make up those items that are within those categories, you'll get a definition of them, but I've also taken those scoring items and compared you to similar or at least local other municipalities that maybe you want to line up to. We haven't actually changed any of them out. If you have other ones that you would rather see in the future, we can always change that, but a lot of them are fairly comparable as far as maybe going the same path as you or have been down that same path, so you can kind of see where you might be able to get to looking at where they're at. And so that graphical information, I think it starts on page 8 where your scoring card is. And actually on page 8 there I have a little bit of a comparison of where we were on the 22 rating to the 21 rating. On your finances, really, of all the things that you're evaluated on, your finances, your fund balance as a percentage of revenues increased from a AA to a AAA, which means that you have really strong fund balance percentage right now, and your 5-year fund balance trend increased from an A to an AA. So that 5-year trend has a blip in it, and I think that'll improve as we go too once that blip comes out. But you can see we're making some strides in the finances as well. You know, debt and pensions, really, it decreased from a AAA to a AA, but you can't really control that. That's something that Moody's actually calculates, and they've got their own formula. And so whatever they're using as, you know, they could be using different assumptions that maybe triggered that to move around, but that's something that really there's not much you can do about. So I did include in the report on page 8 is actually the scorecard that was in your rating report this year, so you can kind of see how you rate out on each one of those categories that I talked about earlier. Going on to the next section, really we talk about your equalized value. We're trying to be somewhat conservative. I mean, if you really looked at how we did this last year with your economic or your growth, you really, you know, looked like you really grew quite a bit, which was about 12.5% was your growth. But you know, as I looked at the statement of change, which breaks out, you know, whether it was net new construction or economic, about 10% of your growth was economic, which means, you know, other than that 2% that was net new construction, you know, the rest of it really was an increase on other taxpayers. So a lot of times when we model out things, we're looking at that equalized tax rate, and really, you know, I talked to staff, and we did not want to take advantage of all that growth because, you know, if we came up to where we had for a tax rate the year before on an equalized basis, your market value, we would have piled a lot of taxes onto your local existing resident. And really what we want that projection to show is where we're spreading it out. And so when you look at that schedule and it says on a $100,000 house or whatever we have it, I think we have it in here at your average house value, you know, we would need to take that house and each year increase it by what we're saying that economic gain is, and that way you could kind of see what that house is paying each year. So what we try to do is not to take advantage of that big growth and try to schedule out or get a tax rate that's a little more stable with a less or a more conservative growth rate. So, you know, the one thing that we want to make sure you're cautioned on is that economic growth, because, you know, with the housing prices doing what they've done, they could also go that way. So if we start counting on that growth that may just flip-flop on us, it could come back to haunt us. So I think we'd rather be conservative on that. So you can kind of see where we've modeled out the growth. We're using 2% growth, and really I'm using that as more of a net new construction, hoping that we are really just basing our tax rate on growth that is new. I think that's a better way to show it, because that way your 100, you know, when we're showing it at a certain value house, then that's showing what that house is doing instead of piling a bunch of, you know, reducing the tax rate even though the house is going up. We're not really showing that. So we wanted to make sure that average house is actually showing what the tax rate would do. So that's kind of where we have the equalized value. Going on to the operating projections, really, this has been kind of a fun one because, you know, as you know, levy limits is kind of a restrictive item for a local government. You can only grow your tax rate, not including debt, by a certain a factor called net new construction, which yours is around 2%. So when you take a look at how much the village taxes for non-debt related items, that amount, you know, basically that net new construction amount is all you can go up. So I think I actually had the, in the back here, there actually is the levy limit calculation. I didn't want to put that in the front section because I didn't want you to look at all these numbers and go, wow, it's a bunch of numbers. So really, when you look at what we're adding on for 2022 budget versus 2023, we're adding about, you know, $140,000 of taxes. And as you know, $140,000 gets chewed up quite a bit when you got 7 to 10% inflation. The unfortunate thing about levy limits is they don't give you that inflationary increase. There's another program called Expenditure Restraint, which does. So the fact that these two programs don't kind of speak the same language is a little bit weird, but the state has taken that approach where you're only going to get this small amount of growth. There's a chance you'd get a large amount of growth, but still, I think if you're getting decent growth, like 4 or 5%, still this year's inflation is going to kill that. So unfortunately, the operating budget is something that is kind of something that's a little harder to project right now, just because we basically don't get any increases on regular revenues. And so with your expenditures going up, and the only other thing that really you can fund things with is levy, you're going to start showing deficits. And so we have two ways that we show this to our clients. One is where we show the pressure of that inflationary growth and that lack of ability to raise your taxes on the levy limit worksheet. What we talked with staff, and staff preferred showing that the general fund just was increasing by net new construction. So when we get to, when I point you to the operating page, which I shall show you, that you'll see that we're showing, and even on that next page where the general fund budget graph is, it kind of shows you that we're taking a hit, we're not keeping up. So just the assumptions is tax levies are the tax levy increase for the library fund and the general fund is based on net new construction. We're saying it's about 2% annually. That's a little conservative based on how you've done. Non-tax revenues remain flat, and then expenditures are increased by what we call forecasting codes, which kind of groups like items and then increases those by those percentage. Now that's obviously more crystal ball, and whether those happen in that way is hard to say if that's going to be realistic, but I think the numbers we used are at least as good as you can. A lot of 5% type increases. We didn't go up as high as 7 to 10 because we were going over the 5 to 10 years, so we're hoping that we don't stay in that environment the rest of the time. Just to talk about some things that when the levy limits come into play that you may have to consider is, you know, how do we make that, how do we actually recover from the fact that we don't have enough growth to basically fund what we want to do? And so you know, the first place you start is this year's budget, and you kind of look at what everything has and see if there's things you could cut, whether it's the contingency budget, or maybe there's capital in the general fund that maybe could be borrowed for. It could be that you have maybe some budgets that have fluff in them. I'm sure that's not the case here, but you know, you need to look at those areas first. And once you look at those areas, you know that you've done is, you know, you've got things down to what it takes to really run your village. Then you're gonna need to start looking at things like, you know, are there ways to find other revenues? And unfortunately, in this world of local government, you don't have a lot of options on that. You know, there's wheel taxes, there's street light, electric bill, user fees, which is kind of an interesting one where it really is a fee you put on the utility bill. It's really a tax, but it's a fee you can put on the utility bill that pays for the electric bill that the village pays for streetlights. So it's a way to recover some revenue outside of the levy limit that helps you pay for, you know, you can shift that to a different operating item and maybe be able to hold on to all your services. Stormwater utilities are things that people have done over the years that there's a levy limit subtraction that comes into play if you implement it, but after that you've got it in place and you're able to increase and pay for your stormwater and your street cleaning and things like that. And transportation utility, that's something that we're hoping comes out of the courts as a positive, so you have another opportunity, but right now, the Pewaukee lawsuit is really holding things up, and so, you know, it's possibly something that you can use to fund your streets in the future, but right now, with it being in the courts and not having really a way to assure that that's gonna happen, that's something we'll have to put in our back pocket. So as we get a little more desperate, we go down to the expenditure level. You know, you have to start looking for places to cut. It could be that you're going to take a look at whatever's funded by taxes, and you maybe start to eliminate services. Maybe a good place to start is to ask your residents what are their priority services and whether there's things that they could do without. That's not a fun chore, but that's one way that you can go about that. And like I said, you know, eliminating contingency budgets, if there's anything that's just a placeholder for anything that goes up, you know, obviously that's something you would get rid of. And then as far as, you know, the last resort, and I guess I mentioned it a little earlier, is that prioritizing of services and eliminating services that are funded by the tax levy that goes along with that survey. And then worst case scenario is a levy limit referendum, which surprisingly, there's more and more of those that are happening these days. So that's kind of your list of low-hanging fruit to last resorts, and so just keep that in mind if we get to the point where our levy limit is really starting to hammer us. So, you know, yes.
Quick question. Have you heard about what West Dallas is considering, Cale Decker,
Is that the fire department one?
taking it off the levy?
So we kind of have a question on that because that's a negative adjustment on the levy limit. So they're my client, and I've asked the finance director to kind of walk me through what they're trying to accomplish. So I'll have that answer once he stopped being so busy that he can actually answer me. So I mean, I've asked him a couple times, and
Yeah.
I'll get an answer.
We're
but-
all looking forward to hearing
Yeah,
whether that's gonna
because,
work.
you know, we have the same thing, is that, you know, if you do that, that's one of those covered services, and that's a negative adjustment. So if you were to move something off of the levy, you basically have to go back to the 2013 levy amount for that service, and that's what gets the negative adjustment. Anything since then, I think, is okay, but you would have to, you know, basically cut your taxes back for eliminating that service. So it's an interesting game. So as far as
One question.
Sure.
I would presume that every community in Wisconsin is under pressure right now with the levy limits.
Absolutely. You know, there's a couple spoiled brats out there, I'll say, that don't even use their debt adjustment on their levy limit, which is what, you know, basically for the village, we use the debt adjustment to cover what our GO debt payments are. But they have never used it, and they have a little bit of flexibility up to their levy limit. So places like that, and I don't really know how they got there. I think they've just tightened their belt for so long that they've had that flexibility. Might be able to pull off things like that, but most places, I'd say 75% of the places that I look at, they're up to the max on their levy limit, and so it's gonna be rough this year. It really is, and really, I think, you know, I know the league's trying to do some things about getting that inflationary kicker back into the levy limits. It got proposed, I think, in 2010 and didn't go anywhere. But I think it's really something where I don't know how you continue to operate, and they certainly don't want you borrowing for operations. And, you know, if there's no place to cut, you gotta do drastic things. So I kind of feel like the more that those levy limit referendums go, the more that's gonna catch the eye of the state legislatures, and then they're gonna have to do something to help you guys out to be able to, you know, not only cover your supplies, but be able to retain your staff. So, any other questions on that? Okay. So basically, you know, when we modeled out the operating, and if you really wanna see the model on that, the schedule is on page 15 is where the general fund is, and 16 is where the library fund is. And as I said on this page, the top line is going up by net new construction. And as you can see, as expenditures are going up by an average of about 3.75% using the codes we use, every year is getting a bigger deficit. And so, you know, if I was doing this the other way, where I do the levy limit spreadsheet showing the pressures, you know, we would be showing this as a balanced budget. But in this case, the levy limit worksheet is in compliance, and it's showing that we can't afford to actually cover what we have over the next 10 years. So hopefully, hopefully there'll be a fix as far as inflationary things, because obviously that's a really big deal for most communities this year. So the reflection of that loss each year kind of shows where our general fund going from our being in compliance with our policy of being between 20 and 35% of the general fund expenditures, shows that we lose that really fast by not having the ability to tax for what our services may go up to. So that's kind of a really good depiction there of what happens if we can't keep up with how much our services cost. Any questions on operating? And I'm happy to go into the schedules in the plan as well, once we get done if you want. Okay, so I talked a little bit about the capital plan back on that earlier page. This year you decided to try to model out 10 years. And so, as you know, your capital plan, which there is a listing of all your projects starting back on page B1, it's in Appendix B. You'll see all the items in here. I know you've seen this schedule. You have a very aggressive capital plan, and so it really, as you saw, and I think Martin passed out the schedules, and those schedules are in this document as well, showed that we're really going to jump up the tax rate over a couple of years. And like I said, when I started, I was trying to get one flat tax rate, but it didn't make any sense because it was basically really clobbering the tax rate right off the bat. So the preferred way on page 22 was to basically try to step up to where that maximum tax rate was, and where we determined that we could, where that number was to be able to fit in the 10-year projects, is we needed to eventually get up to $3.45 of equalized tax rate on $100,000 of value, so equalized value. So we started about $2 this next year, and we're going to jump up each year based on those new projects, which, like I said, there's quite a bit coming on in the next, probably 6 years that really is causing that. So one of the things that I want to talk about with this is I was here in front of you last year. I don't know that we definitely went down the path of considering doing policies, but one thing that policies for the capital plan can really help you do is to take that big wish list and determine whether or not you can really do it all. So I mean, if the debt capacity policy is 60%, we wouldn't let that debt capacity graph go above that 60%. And right now we're almost at 70 based on this all-in version of the capital plan. Another thing that you have to consider is are you willing to have the tax rate go from $2 to almost $3.50? A lot of that is hopefully going to be covered by new construction, but not all of it. So it's going to hit your taxpayer. So is there a tax rate where you kind of look at, well, what did it do to this property? Where are we now? Where will they be next year using their market value on their tax rate or tax bill, and say, okay, what does that do to them if they're going up by, an economic gain of 10% or something? What's their tax bill going to do? And kind of try to figure out, is there a tax rate that you don't want to go above, or that kind of kicks in an evaluation of what does that mean to that taxpayer, and how much are you willing to go? So really, when you hit that tax rate policy and this debt capacity policy, that can take you from having the big list you have now to spreading some of that out, moving it to the years where it's lower, making it something where you've got a plan that gets your facilities updated, your roads done, but doesn't completely hit your taxpayer too hard. So those two policies are common ones that I see all over the place, and that's one that when I was a finance director, if it didn't meet it, we went back to the departments, moved things around. When we came to the village board, they decided whether or not that was the same priorities that the staff had, and then you have a chance to move it around. We would run a final analysis to see if it meets your policies, and if everything's in check, then that's when you have the chance to approve it. So you're at a point where you should start to think about what those policies should do, and that can kind of direct you as far as where you're going in the future. Because each year you're going to say, well, am I within policies? If I'm not, I got to do some work to get there. So that's two of the policies. I did list a third one that I do see at certain places. Basically, it's a debt payments as a percentage of expenditures and levied funds. I had a client that had just the general fund in their policy this year, and it was the first year of their policy, and they blew it up with one DPW building. And so we've been working on actually redoing that one, but the policy basically says that if you take the expenditures of the general fund, the library, the debt service, if you have a levy in the capital projects fund, you take those total expenditures, multiply it by that percentage, and that's the total amount that your levy could go up, or your debt payments could go up. So theirs was really restrictive, basically based on what their policy said. They can't do capital projects for the next 2 years to make up for what they did. So it's something that, you know, if you're gonna do that kind of a policy, you gotta make sure you still have flexibility. But it is one also that you could use in kind of guiding your CIP plan. Then the impact of the current plan, as we talked about before, and I had it graphically, is that, you know, your debt capacity will rise based on the current plan from 44% up to about 70% in 2027. And then because we're doing less projects out in those later years, it actually starts to funnel down. As you saw in that graph on a couple pages back, it actually, we hit the mountain and then we go back down. So, and that's with mostly the whole 10 years of projects in there. Typically you'd see that downwards turn once you get past the project period, but because your plan has less projects out there, we're seeing that decline come in a little bit earlier than normal. As far as the tax rate, you know, as I said, on a $320,000 valued property, you know, we're at about 2022 approved budget was $1.57, or about $504 for taxes on your debt tax rate. In 2028 is when we get up to that tax rate that'll help us pay for the rest of the projects or some of the big ones that we've taken on, and that goes up to $3.45, which is more like $1,104. So, you know, that's a doubling of that tax bill, and that's something where that policy maybe keeps you in check with how much you're willing to go up. As far as that third policy that not everybody has, you know, if you were to put in a policy that said that you were going to have 30% of those levied funds, you'd only be able to have levy payments or debt payments of about $3.5 million. So you can see how restrictive that one is, and that's something that, you know, like I said, not everybody has it, but it is something that, you know, once you get past your facility improvement part, it's possibly something that would be good to put in, because at that point at least you won't have such large facilities that need upgrading. Any questions on that? Okay. So then just the overall impact, which is on page 4, you can see that one thing with the tax rate is because we're adhering to levy limits, that blue line stays flat. And so that's what levy limits do to you. It basically, without growth, you're not able to raise that blue line up. But we're basically holding the operating line because we're adhering to levy limits there. And then the library, same thing. You know, we're adhering to levy limits in that fund. The yellow line is TID levy support, and we're hoping as our TIDs get more healthy that will disappear. We won't be using in our levy to fund any TIFs that are not performing as well. And then, as you can see, the overall tax rate then flattens out somewhere around $7.10, I think it was. And really it's flat off the bat this way just because we've got levy limits, and we're building a plan for you for capital that we want to establish a stable tax rate. And so this is kind of what it would look like if things happen the way that they are in this plan. So as far as just conclusions, you know, the village has a very strong bond rating. It shows the health of the village economically and financially. You have a very aggressive CIP, and I believe that using policies to guide your process is important to have in place so that you can really kind of, you know, you'd be able to come, you know, show the village board on your first run where you're at. Maybe there's some things that staff has already taken care of as far as making policies, and then the village board can take a kick at whether those projects are in the priority that they want. But that way, at least when you're getting it, you see it in compliance, and then you can move things around, and if things have to jigger and jagger around just to get everything to be in compliance, then you can make those moves and then come back and have that analysis run again. Levy limits, like I said, they're going to create pressure for you in the future. When net new construction is 2 to 4% or something like that, and you're getting inflation of 7%, we're going to be in some trouble. And plus, there's a lot of places out there in the world that are offering better wage increases, and you want to keep your staff. So I mean, you've got to have some tools to keep your staff and to keep your services. So hopefully there'll be some things that'll come into play here as things go forward. Addressing the levy limit restrictions, obviously, if you look at the general fund flattened out, it keeps your fund balance level, and so as long as we adhere to that, we don't have to worry about our fund balance policy and our liquidity at all. You're doing a great job as far as trying to bring in business. I know that because we're always involved when it comes to new businesses coming to town. So, having that economic engine going and bringing in new business is really a good help as far as growth and getting your ability to raise taxes. Developing financial policies, I think, I know that Martin reached out to me for a fund balance policy, but I think, hitting all of those and getting ready for next year would be something that I would encourage. And then, as we're doing now, I mean, this year you're getting another full document because we increased how many years we were doing, but keep up the long-range planning, because at least it gives you an idea of what you're going to experience in the future, or what the kind of things that you have in mind on your plate for long-term infrastructure, of what that does to you and how you can fit it in and afford it. So that's really the general government side of things, and I'm happy to dig into any of the pages if you went through before I move on to utilities.
Mike, go ahead.
So what are the bond rating implications of borrowing as much money as we have on our capital plan?
Well, the one thing that we heard from Moody's this year is that they were not concerned with how much we have on our list right now, because we have a lot of good growth and we're able to afford it. I don't know that we showed them the 10-year plan with some of the things. So, I mean, whether they would be concerned about you taking on the exact plan that you have in front of you wouldn't end up giving us a little bit of grief on some of those markers. But just realize that that's one item in the scorecard, and so that might not necessarily bring you down.
Presumably, if we took the same amount of expenditure and instead of front-loading it into 5 years, we could somehow push it out across 10, that would keep our tax rate and our bond rating better?
That's possible, yeah.
Okay.
So Dave, when I was reading this, one of the things that I remember, the self-imposed debt limit,
Mm-hmm.
I think as long as I've been on the board since 2018, we've talked about doing a policy about the self-imposed debt limit, and it seems like I think you're absolutely right. That was sort of would, when we look at projects, not to say that we couldn't go over that if we really felt it was necessary, but I think it does sort of keep us in check for a bit. Do most of the communities you work have something self-imposed?
Quite a few of them now. I mean, especially the ones we're working with that have never had them. They're starting to get them, but more of your bigger communities, a lot of your local surrounding communities have them. So the one thing that I will say about if you do approve a policy, one thing that will come into play is when you go out for bonding. If you do exceed it, Quarles will have an issue with the fact that you're not in compliance with your policies. So if you decide to exceed it, you'll have to actually have a motion or some type of motion to waive the policy that year. But they'll probably want you to have a plan to get back into compliance. So I would make it a realistic one so that you don't have to go over it, because really the purpose of it is to keep you in check anyway. So I do have clients that did do a fairly large legacy project, and so they actually approved a plan where they could be out of compliance for 2 years, and that worked for Quarles. So, I mean, there's ways to do it, but you still have to get back down, so.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Mike?
Yes, is it appropriate, on page 30, there's in section 8, number of recommendations, page 47 in the packet. Is it appropriate to put a motion on the floor to recommend that for consideration into the finance committee to start thinking about that?
I mean, we have it on our list of projects right now, and
Okay.
Lisa and I have been working on it. I think that's gonna be our next major project now that we've kind of gotten over the ordinances that we've been working on. This is gonna be the next project where we're gonna have to pluck away at putting these things together.
Okay.
Who else? Anybody else? Questions for Dave or comments? Yeah, Amanda?
Yeah, I've looked at where the Village of Oregon is with our tax rate, and we tend to be on the low end of Dane County. So like a typical, like a median or average off the top of your head in terms of dollars per thousand of home value, what?
It's something that I could get for you, because what we have is we actually have like a little database where we sometimes do a chart which shows how you compare that way. So it's possible that I could get something that, and I know that even the DOR, doesn't the DOR have an annual tax rate sheet that compares you as well? I feel like there's something out there as well. This will, your tax rate has been pretty low because I think you haven't done all your facilities over the years, and so it's one of those how do you weigh that? Because you're low because you haven't done your facilities, and the other communities have gone through quite a few of theirs. So you could almost look back to, boy, I bet you went back to the 2000 time for Wanakee to see before we started doing libraries and community centers and stuff like that. So it's definitely something that affects where you're going.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else? All right, I think staff is looking for a recommendation, and the motion is,
Do you want me to do?
He's
Oh,
got
I'm-
the utilities.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna do a pretty
I
high
thought we were
level.
ready.
I'm not a huge utility guy, but I'm prepared to at least
Okay.
do a little bit of an overview of the plan. Martin, did you hand out the handout?
I got it.
So basically, Brian, I wish Brian could be here because I know that, if you have any detailed questions, he's very, very knowledgeable at utilities, and he has a lot of in-depth knowledge of PSC and rates, and he's actually helping you with your rate study with the water utility right now. And Lisa, are you doing sewer this year as well?
Yes.
Okay.
We're doing both.
So he's helped out with that, and so a lot of this information was kind of already available because we started doing the rate study, and so really he took a look at the 5-year history, and then as asked for by the village, did a 10-year look forward on how the CIP affects things and what the need is for future rates. Obviously, the PSC rules the rate increases for the water utility, but the sewer utility you have is deregulated, which means that you're pretty much able to make your changes in rates, annually or probably more so. I don't know why you would do that, but I think you have the freedom to make rate changes when you need to. And then basically just kind of identify where the future health indicators need to be, and there's a little bit of information about affordability of plan at the end. So on the next page, really what he wanted me to highlight for you is you have extremely large reserves that are very healthy. In fact, I think that you'll see that basically in the plan for funding your capital projects in the beginning, that Brian has recommended that using cash in concert with some debt can help you basically bring your cash down to more of the target range, which you can see where the target range is on this first graph is more around, a little bit less than $1 million, maybe about $1 million now in 21. But your cash reserves are such that you have the ability to cash finance some of your your projects. So that's something that actually is a great thing that you have that ability to do, because that'll kind of take away from some of the debt burden that you might get from some of the projects you have in here. The next is the debt coverage, and because we just did, I think, our first revenue bond issue, there really isn't a lot of debt outstanding as far as revenue bonds for the water utility, and so you can see from a coverage perspective, you have plenty of ability to take on new debt, which is also a very healthy sign for the water utility. As far as some weaknesses that Brian Wan brought out is the fact that your operating and maintenance expenses ratio is a little bit a little close to where the target line is. We're just barely above 1, which means that our operating revenues is basically equal to our operating expenditures plus depreciation. And the target says that basically you're 1 for 1. We're a little bit above that, and I think that the rates that Brian is showing that you should consider in the future, that are projected to be in the future, will hopefully get that ratio a little bit healthier and be a little bit more above 1, so that you're not too close to that line. The next page, which doesn't have a page number, but I think it's 5, actually shows where the forecast kind of shows where you need to have some rate increases. You're working on the one for the 23 budget, which will help. Looks like it's about a 31% increase for rates, and that basically gets you back up to where you're making the rate of return that you're required to have, as well as it helps you as far as like future projects where you're basically using some cash as well as some borrowing, and that's shown on this schedule as well. But when you're not in need of a larger increase because you don't have those larger projects that are demanding that, then we recommend basically a periodic simplified 3%, which actually I think that's gone up a little bit. The PSC allows you, Jeff, help me out there, is I think that they allow you more like a 6% now. I think
Well,
I heard.
that's a good question, because I'm not sure.
I think the simplified is now jumped up a little just because of
inflation.
interest rates, and there's a pressure there, so I can get an answer on that one too.
And one of the questions I know I had was, how come we don't just do 3% every year?
I think
What-
that's more of a Brian question.
Okay, good, yeah, I was gonna say, that might just be helpful, because it seems to me that we've talked about before of, rather than being where we are now, where we have not had a rate case, we've not had a rate increase since 2011, I believe. And we're obviously not keeping up with inflation, so we're probably looking at a lot of some deferred projects.
Right.
Whereas it's better once we do get the rate case, the full rate case, to maybe look at annual increases that are much more palatable, so we don't have the larger ones that come along and hit us.
Yeah, and the one thing that he does have in here under that color green is that simplified rate case if eligible. So there must be something that kicks in that allows you to do that
Okay.
rate case at that time. But I'll get you an answer on that as
Okay,
well.
great, thank you.
Anything else on the water utility? Oh, there's one more page on water, sorry. Anything else on the cash flow? As far as recommendations, he recommends using cash to basically offset your debt and manage the rate adjustments. We're doing a conventional right now with a 2023 test year, and that's underway right now with Ellers and the village. And then execute simplifies in the future as eligible to manage the future rate adjustments. So we'll just I'll let you know what that, have Brian get us an answer on what is the eligibility. So I'll get that back to you. Anything else on water? If you have any questions you want that are more detailed, I'm happy to get that back to you as well, once I have a chance for Brian to. Okay. So then on the sewer side, once again, we do have a pretty good cash reserve, very strong, and it's increasing as a trend. You can see we're way above our targeted amount, so you'll see that in the cash flow that Brian did, that there's a fairly decent amount of cash being used throughout the years that we're using, that we had on hand. So it basically brings that cash balances down from having well, this year includes some debt, but it brings that down to more of a $2.4 million cash balance going forward, which is more in line with the targets that the PSC, what we recommend are as far as a minimum balance. The other thing that is strong is, once again, we don't have a whole lot of revenue debt. It's something that we just did an issue, is that, the coverage is, you can issue a lot of debt still for your sewer utility if you need to, and that's something that, shows you're very strong there as well. As far as the weaknesses, once again, the operating ratio on page 8 shows that we aren't quite at a 1. We were a little bit better on the water side, but we're below that target line. And so really what we'd like to see is have revenues be increased so that we are able to cover our operating expenses plus our depreciation. So doing a rate increase on sewer will hopefully give us the ability to pop that up as well. And so I think that's being worked on now, and that benchmark will be a little better looking when we show you this next time. And then as far as rate increases, Brian has in here that you would plan on doing about 11% in 23, 11% in 24, and then in this case, because you can set your rates when you want, he's recommending doing 3% periodically throughout the 10 years as well. And that keeps, the cash balances basically where that target amount needs to be. As far as sewer recommendations, same thing is that, because you have that cash that you can use to as a mix in how you're financing things, that can help you not only keep that strong reserve benchmark, but also reduce how much you're using to borrow for projects. And then build your rate adjustments to the future. You can phase in rates and structure around water adjustments if you want, because you're unregulated, you have the ability to make those changes when you want. So if you're doing a water increase in 1 year, this one could be something that you put off to another year. So it's something that I think is sort of demonstrated on the next page, which is the analysis of impact on an average user. There's a few smaller, it looks like 2 of them are going at the same time because we're doing that at the same time, but afterwards it looks like, we're doing a bigger sewer, and then we have some smaller ones kind of sprinkled throughout. But what this is saying is that, based on the recommended increases that was in the cash flow statements, that, if you implemented what we need to keep the cash balances proper and it's funding our operating and our depreciation, that, over 10 years, a person would pay about $355 more over that 10 years if there was no rate increase. So it's not a very big dollar amount for both water and sewer increases. That's that's a accumulation of all the annual increases. So that's like 10 years worth of additional amounts paid for the water and sewer services. So it's not a huge burden on as far as the tax or the rates. It sounds like we're going up by a lot, but they really end up being not super huge, especially after we get past that first water and sewer increase that first year. And the only other schedule that Brian had in here is this is something that he said it comes into play more when you have some rate issues or some rate structure issues. And what they typically look at, and he pointed out on here, is people that have income of less than or $25,000 or less, and there aren't a lot of the households in Oregon that have that type of income. But you can see that on average of those people, of those residents, that that would take about 5.19% of their income. His comment was that that's a pretty small portion of your population, and that the PSC probably won't make any changes to the rate structure because of how it's set up right now. So that's what I had for utilities. I'm happy to take any other detailed questions that you might have that I can have Brian answer, and I get back to you.
All right. Anybody? All right, Dave, is that it? Am I,
I'm done.
All right.
Unless you want me to answer questions.
I got a little eager there earlier, so.
Thank you.
All right, so the, someone want to make a motion to approve the report as presented? Mike and Amanda, any discussion from us? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. And Dave, thank you very much for coming. All right, we're on to public, 4B, public comment. This part of the agenda allows members of the public to provide information to the village board, including items both on and off the agenda. Members have 3 minutes to address the village board. Hans, I think you are here for that.
Yes.
Okay?
Is this good?
Perfect.
Okay. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Hans Neldner. My wife and I live at 133 West Lincoln Street in the village, and I've gone over what I'm going to say to you with her and covered her points in mind, so I'm speaking on behalf of both of us. I'm here to speak about 249 North Main Street, which was the home of the People's United Methodist Church for more than a century. First, I thank the board of the village for providing residents with a survey which came about in response to a proposal to make the parcel into a sculpture garden. But I must chide the village for failing to provide any information in the survey about how your predecessors justified purchasing the property and how much the village has spent to acquire, plan for, and maintain the property to date. It hasn't been cheap, much less free. I think a lot of village staff money has been spent on that. Now, I followed village activities very closely at the time of purchase and served as trustee on the board from 2005 through 2007. There was no support for leaving the parcel standing empty. 3 possibilities were envisioned: a site for a new village hall, a site for a new library, or sale to a developer whose improvements would significantly improve assessed value and add residents to the heart of our village. Ask yourself, what could be better for our parking-strapped downtown businesses than new customers who live within a block or two? In short, the purchase was about return on investment. Since that time, proposal after proposal has been rejected, due in no small part to the objections of a dozen or so residents who surround it. I doubt that the original use, a church, would even get the green light. No, many of us would like to live next door to a cornfield or a woodland or a park. Many of us would like to preserve our own little corner of Oregon and amber, forever untouched by change and growth. But it is the sworn duty of this board to act on behalf of all this 10,000 or so residents it serves. For the village to gain no direct financial return on this parcel is unacceptable. Let me repeat that. It would be unacceptable. 249 North Main is prime property in a Dane County market where ambitious downtown redevelopment projects are happening everywhere. A sculpture garden might be okay if its supporters were willing to pay full market value for the parcel and property taxes and the cost of maintenance. But we know that's highly unlikely. Sound business decisions can be contentious, but you have a fiduciary duty to make them. That means not conceding to the not in my backyard attitude. It's not like you would ever consider approving a lead smelter or a 15-story skyscraper on this site. We're not talking about that. I urge you to move forward on 249 North Main while the development market is still hot. Solicit development proposals aggressively and cherry-pick the best. Recoup those taxpayer dollars as the TIF matures into full assessed value. and give our downtown businesses a much-needed boost. Having seen the presentation on finances here, I can only underscore the urgency of this. Thank you.
All right, Hans, thank you very much for your comments. Thank you. All right, anybody else in the audience need to speak? Okay, would like to speak? Okay, see none? Let's go to 5, folks. Let's go to vouchers. Approval of vouchers in the amount of $1,879,952.40. Let's get a motion and a second. I see Phil, Amanda. All right, we got a motion on the table. Questions on the vouchers? Anybody? I didn't see any, actually, for me. Amanda's got
Yeah,
one?
I just put something in my mouth.
Alright.
I was hoping somebody else would go, but snacking. Number 4920 something. I just remembered the number. That was the only one I had.
4927.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, that was for the canine golf outing.
Yeah. I'm wondering what kind of money was brought in from that fundraiser.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know the exact number. I could bring that at the next board meeting if you like, but we were very successful. We had a great turnout, and it went really well. And I want to thank Lisa. She actually took a day off and helped us out, which was very gracious of her, and we appreciate that. But yeah, it was very good.
Okay. Cool. That was, I just saw a dollar amount and I was thinking, ooh, kind of steep, but if you're bringing in a lot more than that?
We did.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
We
Good.
did quite well, and
Good.
I'll bring it next meeting. I'll be happy to.
That's fine, yeah.
All right, anybody else? All right, see none. Candy, voice vote.
Van Campen,
Yes.
Belo,
Yes.
Glish,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Wunsch,
Yes.
and Peterson.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving along, we're on 7, report of committees. 7A is library board, June 8th and July.
What about 6?
We
consent
did the
agenda.
consent agenda.
That was 5. I think you're
Oh.
on 6A right now. Yeah.
Oh, I have a different agenda, I guess. I have,
No, 6A, let's see.
6A is the library board, isn't it?
oh, I have
Library
6,
board, June.
I have 6 as consent agenda.
Sandy, the agendas from up there said that 6A was the consent agenda.
You'd be on 7, actually,
When
at this
happened?
point.
Yeah.
No, the
Says
consent
That's-
everything that senior center done, and all that was voted.
that was
for
all-
The consent
Yeah,
agenda.
so
Yes.
you'd be to item 7.
7, report of committees.
Oh, we voted on the whole consent agenda?
We did.
earlier?
Yeah,
Oh.
ABC.
I thought it was just that one piece. Okay.
No, it was four items, Mike. All right, so report of committees. A is library board, June 8th and July 13th. Meeting minutes, that was informational only, was in our packet. 7B was the Oregon Area Fire EMS District Commission for August 4th. That was in our packet as well. And then we'll go to 7C, which is Plan Commission, and C1 is ordinance number 2232, ordinance changing the zoning classification of property located at 870 and 880 North Main Street from planned business to planned development district. Cole, that's Adam Cole, North Main Street. Coyle, sorry. Planning Commission staff recommendation, motion to approve. We have seen this a couple of times. Elise, do you want to say anything about it? We've seen it.
Yep, just if anybody has any questions.
Anybody? Mike's got one.
Yeah, just a quick one. There's a variance in here for lighting on the south border of the property. How much does that lighting extend over into Quick Trip? Is that just a couple feet because it's a short border, or?
Yeah, so with the plan as shown, I believe it's between 5 and 10 feet into both the Quick Trip and the apartments that are right behind Quick Trip into their parking lot. But there was a suggestion at Planning Commission to actually move the lights from the kind of the front of the parcel where the
You're right.
nose of the car would be closer to the drive aisle, and so that should reduce or eliminate the need for any of that light bleed over to be exceeding the lighting ordinance, which is a 1/2 foot candle off the property line, but, there's only a couple points, and I think the max was maybe 1.5 or something there, but, there are a few updates that planning commission asked for, and clarifications that Adam and I are just gonna work on at a staff level to clean up, so, if they end up making that change for the lighting plan, I'll have a updated photometric plan, but things should be getting better rather than more encroachment, but yeah, those lines, those numbers there, you see, I think each one is 5 feet. So, by the time they get to 5 feet, everything, maybe 1 point there by the light is still
It's 1 feet
out
at
of
5
the-
feet off the property line, or 1 foot candle at 5 feet
Yeah.
off the property line, and it's easily 1/2 foot candle or less at 10 feet.
So the
Okay.
length of a car. It
Thank
wouldn't be
you.
extending into apartment windows or anything like that.
Okay.
I don't have a motion.
Okay.
No.
So, if, we'll take a motion in a second. All right, Derek, get a second from, okay, Jenna. Any other discussion on this? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. C2 is certified survey map for Corey and Jacqueline Ann Amlong, combining lots 338 and 339. It's in the Bergamot neighborhood. I think that's Elise on Alpine, I think?
Cypress.
Cypress.
We had an Alpine one a couple months ago.
Okay, Cypress. Okay, staff is recommending we approve. Do you want to say anything? They're just wanting to build a house on 2 lots.
Right, so just house in the middle and then having a pretty large side yard on both sides.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion in a second? This one? Amanda? We don't get, no second? No. Jenna? All right, discussion. Okay, none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Keep waiting for other people to
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I
motion,
know.
like I don't wanna be the
Take
first
'em all,
every single
yeah.
time, but trying to move things along here.
Yes. All right, eight is unfinished business. Items are for discussion, possible action. We have none. 9 is new business. Items are for discussion, possible action. 9A, it's always a nice conversation, is discuss and possible set village trick-or-treating hours. And I think we had a memo, I think we haven't done anything in the past, right, Martin?
I think,
We haven't done anything officially.
yeah, it's never been set in the past, but the last 2 years, I think there were actually actions that discouraged trick-or-treating because of COVID.
Oh, yes.
So we're getting
Yeah.
questions again, and we just want some direction.
I know if you go on Facebook, there's always like, does the village have hours? So what do we want to do? Nothing again, or, go ahead, Derek, start us off.
I guess I'd be in favor of putting something in writing so this doesn't keep coming forward every year. Historically, it's been on Halloween 5 to 8 since I was a kid and since others were growing up in the village. So if we can put that in writing, I guess that would be all right with me.
So Derek, just so you're recommending that we officially say 5 to 8 on
Correct. Direct
Halloween?
staff to
Okay.
create an ordinance to have trick or treating from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock on Halloween.
Okay,
And I'll even make a motion to that.
all right, go ahead.
if you want.
Okay, Jenna, second. Any other discussion?
Maybe we should add for those who choose to participate
Sure.
in front of that.
Okay, yeah, Amanda?
Yeah, I don't know if we wanna even go this far, but we could just recommend that people, if a house doesn't have their porch light on, then don't knock it, cause they're not participating, I don't know. Is that too
Yeah.
much? Too far?
That's just the rule.
Well, right,
It
it's,
kind of
Just
is,
makes it
yeah.
more fun.
Can we have a no apple policy?
yeah,
You know, so it has to be chocolate or something?
no toothbrushes,
Yes,
no.
no toothbrushes, no
I think
apple.
we should leave it.
Everybody go to
Come on,
Jeff's
Should
house
we-
for candy. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
I think we should stop right here.
all right. All right, so do we just want to make it 5 to 8 on Halloween? For those who, do you want to say for those who
Those who choose
Who-
to participate.
choose to participate?
I'm
Is that okay?
comfortable with that.
Okay, all right, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, okay.
This is history.
History,
History.
Wow.
I think it'll alleviate a lot of confusion, because there's always people asking, do we have it? Do, you know.
Once September first rolls around, the calls start coming.
Yes,
in.
yes,
They do.
yes.
I'd say more like August
Can we
first.
put
Yeah.
that on the, can we put that on the website? then?
Yeah,
Yeah, let's do that.
Please.
All right, let's go to 9B, authorizing a request for bid for the purchase of materials for the 2023 State and Washington Street reconstruction and Janeville Street water main replacement and sewer repair projects. Jeff, do you want to say anything?
Do you want a motion and second?
Yeah, let's do a motion in a second. Mike and Phil. All right, we got a motion?
Yeah, so we're in strange times, as we all know. And part of that is, we're really seeing a lot of requests from contractors, developers, and everything for substitute materials. Like, they'll say, well, we can't get ductile iron pipe, but we can get PVC pipe, and we've never done PVC pipe in the entire tenure here. If we put a piece of PVC pipe, I think we'd have Mr. Belo here, the senior Mr. Belo here, chastising us. So what we're trying to do is kind of get ahead of the curve, rather than, they're saying sometimes ductile iron pipe could be 10 months out. So the plan here is to actually procure the majority of the materials ahead of time, and that'll just be owner supplied as part of the contract.
Okay. Any question? Yeah, I see Mike, and then Amanda's got a question.
Do we have budget for that this year, or how would that be
We have,
funded?
a lot of this is coming out of the ARPA funds, which we already have in pocket.
Okay.
Yeah,
Amanda?
good question.
I was just gonna say, great idea. I
Yeah.
love this. I love that we're thinking ahead and we're saving money by doing it.
Well, we hope we save money. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, we're counting on, and, you know, there are certain things like, remember how you couldn't find disinfectant for a while, and it was going for $8 a bottle, and now they can't give it away at stores, you know, so you always run that risk. I don't think it's gonna be that way, and we'll be going out competitive bid to probably 2 or 3 vendors for that will probably respond, so we hope it'll be a good move.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, we got a motion and a second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, 9C is Architectural Engineering Services proposal for Oregon J.C. Park Concessions Building in the amount of $39,800 and potentially authorizing project bidding. Staff is recommending to approve the proposal as presented and authorize Public Works to publicly bid the project when ready. All right, you want to, let's do a motion in a second. All right, I saw Phil's hand. Who else? Jenna? Okay, all right.
Let's call this crazy bidding 2.0
Yeah.
memo. And this is, again, we're just, like we talked about before, we were gonna value engineer. We have taken the second story off, which I think it would have been very neat. I think in a normal bidding world, we could have done it, and I think it would have been really cool, but as we've learned, there's just certain compromises we make, and I think this will be good. Timing wise, this will be great. I think we will be in at a very good bidding period here in late October, early November, and then construction 2023, which will still be well before the park is fully open and ready for use stuff, so.
Okay. Yeah, Amanda.
I couldn't tell from looking at this whether it's still, whether there was still a family bathroom
There is.
there.
Yes,
Okay,
yep.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mike, yeah.
I think you mentioned in here that this is essentially the same floor plan and everything for the first floor with a minor change for storage.
Yes.
Does the price seem high for architectural services on a building that's already been designed? We're just lopping the second floor off?
Yes and no. I would say, I had a very candid discussion from the architect. It was not an affordable project for them in the first go-around, because they did donate a considerable amount of services. But I looked at it, and, I mean, even normal rebidding of a project, just going through a rebidding process per consultant, and this is just from my personal experience, could easily be over $10,000. They do have to redesign the roof structure, they have to redesign some of the mechanicals and the routing of things. there are some savings, I would agree, but then this also includes construction administration. So, I think it's fair, it's definitely much cheaper than if we were to go the route of going from square one all over again, having someone different redesign the building.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
All
It's a
right.
tough spot. This is one of those ones where it's, this, like I think I said in here, it's been a, what did I say in the end? A torturous path with a very crazy bidding world. And, but I do think that the lower costs and being able to make this will still provide a cost-effective and a nice building for the park.
All right, anybody else? Okay, we do have a motion to second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
I would like to add too, Randy, that
Yeah.
we've been working with Sketchworks both on the village hall and this project. They've been very professional and they've been very good to work with. If I felt like they weren't, there's no way I'd recommend
Okay,
continuing
good.
with them. So,
It's good to hear.
thank you.
All right, 9D is status of 2023 budget process. I think, Martin, you had a handout, or maybe more than a handout. You want to say anything?
Yeah, just a couple things. Yeah, so last year I put together a budget primer, giving some background on the budget process, the schedule, and all the different types of funds the village has. And then just talking through a couple different things related to the budget process, just to get everybody thinking about budget stuff. Usually about this point of the year, we're starting to kind of get anxious to do the budget. But usually, you know, even in mid-September, we're still looking for a few numbers that we don't have. Shared revenues we don't have yet. We don't have our health insurance premiums yet. And this year, we're working on compensation costs, couple different classes of employees. We're still doing the police union negotiations. I believe the fire district is still negotiating. And then we also have our compensation plan that's ongoing. So we're gonna wait for some of those numbers to come in, and then we'll be into October when we start the budget meetings. I think the good thing this year is we spent about 3 months working on capital already, so I mean that's a huge chunk of the budget that we're already on top of, and probably won't need to spend a lot of time on during the budget process. So.
Okay. I'll just say, I think you had these in last year too, but these are always very helpful to kind of refresh our memory, how things work, and definitions and things. All right, anybody have any comments or, yeah, Mike?
Yeah, I'm happy to see that staff got bumped to 3% this year instead of 2%. I do have a concern, and I expressed it to you earlier today, that it seems like, I don't know the answer for it, but it seems like with levy limits, we're funding part of our village off of staff salaries, and it's unfortunate, but we're running behind inflation, and somehow we need to find creative ways to get around that.
Yeah, maybe, I mean, we're, with the compensation study ongoing, you know, it may be that what comes back, we need to phase in over a couple of years just because of levy limits. But it'll be kind of a little bit of a dynamic budget process with compensation, just with the union stuff too. We're gonna be plugging and playing throughout the month of October for sure.
Anybody else? Okay. All right, Martin, thank you. 9, go to 9E, discuss village roles and responsibilities for administration of the school resource officer program and agreement. It's on the agenda, so, Martin, I don't know what are we looking for here?
Well, I think this came up at the last meeting, talking about who will administer certain parts of the SRO program and who will send to certain meetings, particularly under items 3 and 12, and I think 12 more in particular in the agreement. I think we've kind of been doing it on an ad hoc basis for the last 5 years. Some people have come and gone and been involved at certain different times. So it sounds like the board at the last meeting kind of wants to set that in stone, which I think is a good idea.
Okay. Who wants to start? Derek?
I guess I will.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just like I was saying at the last meeting, I'd like to just see it set in stone who's attending the meetings. I mean, regardless of turnover on the board, I think the more eyes on this agreement, the better. The better served the community is as far as that goes. And I'd just like to see the Public Safety Committee be a part of this process going forward.
Okay. So Derek, are you saying everybody from the committee?
It's 3 members.
Three of
so,
you, so all three?
Sure.
Okay.
I would say that would be ideal in my mind. I like the idea of more people at the table, but at the same time, I'm hesitant to put too many people out there just because it really drags down the process. So I think just putting that committee as they're kind of designed as a role with the police department anyways just makes sense. And I guess if the village president wanted to be a part of that, I would probably be okay with, I would be fine with that as well. But I think minimally, the Public Safety Committee should be on there.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, Jenna?
So I agree with Trustee Velo as far as having, for item 12, having that be the Public Safety Committee as representation, or at a minimum, the chair, but preferably the whole committee there to do the semi-annual review. For item 3, though, I guess my understanding of how the agreement worked was that was more staff level meetings. Is that correct? I'm looking at Chief, you and Martin as far as for
Yeah.
item 3.
So that's my understanding as well. I think that if we were to move to a larger group like that, it would probably just change the dynamics, so we would adapt. But, yeah, that's my understanding with paragraph 3.
I think kind of how it's been working is that the stuff that happens at number 3 happens at the staff level,
Yeah.
and then it comes up to the stuff that happens at item number 12, when the actual elected officials come together to discuss what you guys have talked about.
That was my understanding of it as well, and I guess I feel like that seems to be working well, and would like to keep it in that, keep it going if as long as we feel like that all working.
Yeah, and I think part of with item 3 too is the district kind of controls that process, and who they want to have be part of those internal discussions. So I'm not sure how that would work if we kind of tried to insert ourselves to a certain degree.
Okay. Yeah, Derek?
Just to go with Jenna, I'd be fine with just relegating this to the section 12 as well. I mean, like you say, if section 3 is largely controlled by the school anyways, I don't necessarily see a need to push it.
All right. So, Martin, you got what you need?
Yeah, I
So
think what we'll
12
do
is-
is we'll do a resolution, we'll put it in writing so we can keep it for posterity.
Okay. You don't need any,
No action right now.
okay, no action. Okay.
So it doesn't need to be added to the agreement?
No, I think, this side of things is kind of what we want to send our administration.
Okay.
So how do we want to administer item 12 on our side is, our decision is to send the Public Safety Committee. And
Gotcha.
that doesn't necessarily have to be part of the agreement.
All right.
Okay. All right. Let's move to 9F. Discuss public art funds and related policies and procedures for use. I'll kick this one off because I drafted the Public Art Committee and Village of Oregon Public Art Policy. I will tell you that the 9 pages you got in your packet was like over 30 when I started. So what I did basically, I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants here, just looking up places like Eau Claire, Raleigh, North Carolina, Charlotte, Appleton, Louisville, in Colorado, Austin, to see what their policies kind of look like. and trying to sort of come up with a draft for us. And I had everything but the kitchen sink in there to begin with, and it was kind of a mess. So what you have was in your packet is a really shaved down, I think, the essentials of a public art. Try to put everything in there that I thought that we would need to run the program. Not to say that things, as we sort of do it, things will change and things have to be added. We'll encounter things that we didn't think of. But so you have my attempt to come up with a committee, and then also the policy, and then you also have in there, we had a couple artists from South 14 to kind of do a call for art, because they're experts at kind of this, but a call for public art, because that's what we want to do. Is we're going to put out a proposal to artists and see who's interested in participating in the sort of the program. So that's kind of what you have. It's a draft. It's not perfect. We're looking for feedback. I will say that the grants that we got are time sensitive, because one lasts only a year, and we're probably three or 4 months into it already. The bigger one that we got, the 100,000, is 2 years, but we're coming up on close to a year on that one already too. We want to make sure that we spend the money and don't have to give it back. So we want to keep moving. We can't do a call out to the artists until we get the public policy piece approved, and then we can start moving. So, Martin, what am I missing?
Yeah, I think what we just need is this the direction that the board wants to go in? And if it is, then we'll get it into a final good shape and bring it back for adoption at a future meeting.
All right, so comments from other board members. I mean, do you like what you see? Do you hate it? Yeah, Amanda and Mike. I spent 2 weeks on it, by the way.
In general, I like it. I guess I'm wondering how much is the Arts Council or whatever, the Public Art Committee,
Yeah.
going to influence the artists? Like when you put a call out for art, are you guys saying, well, we want a statue of whatever?
Yeah, typically not, Amanda. We don't sort of tell what artists what they should make. It's up to them. One thing you didn't have is we have done a map, and there's like 12 proposed locations around the village to start with. That may influence what somebody makes. I know that somebody has asked me about they want to make a buffalo out of metal. So if you saw the criteria for the artist, we do give them criteria that it's got to be, it can't be sharp objects. It's got to be, you got to worry about safety. It's got to be weather well outside, that sort of stuff. So, and then they send us a proposal. This is what somebody will say. I kind of want to make this. And then the committee will sort of, like any committee, you look at the proposals and say, I think this might be a good fit, or work with the artists or whatever. And then also we want to include the public too, to give them some input. Do you like this or whatever? And then eventually, when it's sort of whittled down, then we'll do a juried kind of thing with art professionals to sort of pick the finalists. Does that make sense? Does that kind of help understand?
Yeah, and my other question too is, I don't know if it's a question or request.
Yeah.
you know, I definitely, this council want to see a variety of people,
Right.
from various types of arts and backgrounds and
Yes,
groups.
I would
and that
agree.
kind of thing,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Yeah, and I think, I can't remember, I think we say it in the call. I think the initial call, my thought was to sort of keep it within Dane County, to sort of, and I'm thinking, just because we have a lot of great artists, local artists, and I know other communities that go all over all over the country, but initially for this, let's celebrate our local artists. That, you know, that can change too down the line, but to recognize that we have all this talent and try to get them to sort of do some proposals.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just one other, like, logistics note,
Yeah.
8D. I
8D.
don't have the page number in front of me, but item 8D in the
I'm on
draft there. That's the one, I think it's at the bottom where it talks about how the artist has to certify that it's been installed correctly, and am I remembering that correctly?
Installation right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, maintenance.
If an artist, you know, 'cause you'd want to bring in artists from out of state and other places, I'm curious, I mean, can they have a proxy or somebody there to do that? Because how would they do that if they live in California? or
Yeah,
something?
I think, you know, we'll sort of make whatever accommodations that we need to. I mean, we want to work with the artist on all this stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Mike?
Yeah. Thanks for your work on this. I imagine it was a ton, and anyone else that was involved. I have a couple comments. In general, I agree with Amanda. I like the direction of this. I had a couple comments and maybe a different direction on a few pieces. Section 3.2 on page 227 deals with who's a member of the organization, and it limits it to artists. And I would really like to see that that if we're gonna choose the artists on here, that we try and get people that are affiliated with the different arts committees
Yeah.
throughout the area. 14th South Artists, Madison Art Guild, that sort of thing. And that we also include some non-art people. And the reason is I have a slightly broader, the success of this program to me is not only about the quality of the art, it's about our ability to do outreach, to draw people in to view the art and boost our business community. And as importantly, the ability to drive donations and things into the art program to ensure that it's continuously funded beyond the original grants. I'm not sure, while I'm sure that there are artists that have those skill sets, I think we could cast a wider net and bring
Okay,
other
yeah,
people
no,
into
good
that.
comment.
Section 5 on the same page talks about staff providing the secretary. I don't have a strong objection, but all of our other ad hoc committees right now are providing their own secretaries.
Yeah, I think what I meant, and maybe that's a typo, Mike, for me, what I really meant was like an advisor. You know how we sort of have a piece of staff kind of is
Okay.
part, yeah, that's what I meant. I
These
didn't
are-
meant that
these
they had
are
to take
all-
notes.
None
Yeah.
of these are motions. They're
Yeah.
just, since this is a draft, they're just comments.
I got it
and
circled.
what
I
I'm
know what you
thinking.
mean, yeah. I didn't meant that they had to take notes and all that stuff. but-
I understand your focus on local artists.
Yeah.
I'm questioning whether local artists should also include Rock and Green counties.
Yeah,
since
somebody
they're-
else mentioned that to me too.
They're
Yeah.
closer to us than parts of Dane County.
Okay.
The section 6.5 on page 228 talks about basically fundraising and things. I think we should make that a much stronger focus, something like, ensure ongoing funding for the arts program by pursuing grants, private donations, business sponsorship, fundraising. Because if this committee can't do that, this program will fail.
Yeah, okay. All right, good comment.
In section 6 in general, an additional duty would be to publicize the existence of the Oregon Public Art Program throughout surrounding counties and create, maintain, and publish a map of public art installations within the village so that tourists can pick it up and go see stuff.
Yeah, and Mike, I get, maybe I didn't put it in here, but part of the grants that I wrote, there is this map component, a creation of a map, yeah.
You and I had discussed last week, some sort of community choice program as a
Mhm.
way to involve the community.
Yeah.
So basically, we have the artwork, it's on display, and allow input from the community or vote in the community on what artwork they really like, and maybe that becomes part of a permanent collection as opposed to something we send.
Yeah, so just for everybody else, the way sort of that works, so Claire does this, they ask the artists when they do their proposals, are you willing to be part of the people's choice? And you sort of give a limit, like, you know, we have a budget of $10,000 if you want, and then they opt in, and if their piece becomes the most popular one, then the community buys it and becomes part of the community's permanent collection. So Eau Claire does it, and I think it's a popular thing, yeah.
You limit the art location to the downtown area, is that just out of the box? That's what's in the call?
It's not, that was just sort of, I just felt maybe downtown would be, so we could create some awareness of the art.
So start there
But,
and we
but
expand out.
the map, which you didn't have, it's all over the place, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then I just, and I don't know how to address this, but we put $1,000 limit on what we're going to pay an artist or give an artist to donate their work. I don't know that a hard number like that makes sense.
Well, let me tell you, so when I first started writing the grant, I was skeptical about, it's like, what artist is gonna do it for? And everybody should know too, we're talking about these are gonna rotate. So basically, they're loaning it to us for a year. And I thought, well, who's gonna do it for $1,000? But believe it or, and that's sort of a common practice. That's what Eau Claire does. And many other communities do the same thing. And so when I've talked to a couple of artists, I'm surprised. They're like, yeah, that's okay. It's fine.
Okay.
Because they get their name out there, and especially if they're local, they like the idea of supporting the community. So I was kind of surprised, but they'll do it.
Yeah,
A little stipend.
I'm a little surprised too.
Yeah,
that,
I am too.
So if it works, then, yeah.
I mean, I
by all
have-
means, you've done more research into it than I do.
I have two sculptors from Stoughton, their stuff is all over the world. They have a piece in Chicago right now, at a big, I don't know, botanical. They're willing to bring it here. And I said, is the stipend okay? It's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Okay. And lastly, I have a general concern that putting the cost of insurance, installation, and maintenance on the artist is kind of a lot, particularly with $1,000 stipend. It seems like that should be, I mean, I could see us approaching the business community to sponsor pedestals. I could see us doing a lot
Yeah.
of things to help offset some of that cost, and it seems an appropriate use of our funds to,
And Mike, I had the same concern when I was writing. It's like, oh, we're gonna make them have insurance, and so I think I need to do some further.
yeah, I would look into
Investigate, 'cause
that. I
that-
think that's
that-
gonna be a real barrier.
Yeah, because people might say, no, I'm not gonna do it.
That's
I
a
have
lot
to have
of
my
hoops
own
to jump
insurance.
through.
Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna say insurance doesn't seem too bad, just because if you own something, like a car or whatever, if you let someone borrow it, you still should have insurance on it, even if somebody else is driving it. I mean, that's kind of how it works. I would think that artists have it like either an umbrella policy or something that would cover it, but that's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I think it's a little clarification. I gotta
Yeah,
do a
but we
little
can
digging.
investigate.
Yeah.
Other than that, really good.
Okay, thank you. Jenna, and then I think Phil.
I was just
Yeah.
gonna comment on the insurance thing, but I think Amanda mostly captured what I was
I
gonna
mean,
say.
Sorry.
Jenna, does it seem reasonable that you would?
I would think that an artist would want to have their own insurance just to
Yeah.
protect themselves, because we can't, I don't believe that we can insure for their art. Like, we can insure
Right.
our damage for our
Yeah, I
stuff,
mean,
but we can't insure anything.
they're loaning it to us. We don't own it. They still own it.
Right.
And I think a lot of these, like these folks from Stoughton, they do this for a living. Their stuff is all over. And I would assume that they have insurance.
We have insurance, right? If it's in our park?
If it's gonna be, so,
That would only
so
help.
it'll be, you know,
Yeah.
we're trying to look at public right of way.
Okay.
So it's village property, yeah.
I did, sorry, I have
Go
one
ahead.
thing pop into my head. And maybe this isn't a big deal because the timeline of the way the timeline laid out, but Mike, you mentioned the concentrating on the downtown area, and I know we had talked about putting art in the library
Yeah.
once it's moved.
Yeah,
So I didn't know if, because of the timing of things, we would have expect this to be altered by the time the library is built, but I generally don't.
so I think if you saw, I think our timeline, just to give you, our timeline, we'd like to get some stuff up for sure in spring.
Yeah, no,
But-
but I'm talking about the timeline for the
Oh,
library.
yeah, so,
That's longer.
so they're one of the spots that are listed on our map. And so our hope is that this is gonna be sustainable, and when they're ready, we'll have a piece for them.
And then we'll adjust the policy?
Cause what did I,
It says the downtown area. That's what I
oh,
believe
yeah,
I-
let me change that, cause I didn't really, I meant we would sort of start there, but I'll fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mean
Village will-
exclusively downtown, yeah. Phil,
Uh,
thank you.
Sure. And thanks for your work on this. Perhaps I missed it, and I don't have a strong opinion either way, but it doesn't seem to indicate if the members of the committee need to be village residents, but based upon the parameters, it doesn't sound like that's
Yeah,
correct.
I would ask the rest of the board to not, especially if we want to go to Greene County and other counties
Yeah.
to get art. I mean, there's a lot of talent, and I'd hate to just say you have to be a village resident.
Are you were talking about the committee members who
Yeah.
pick the art, not necessarily the artist?
Oh,
No,
and
no, the committee members.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
and I think it's Randy, it sounded like you were talking
yeah,
about the artist.
you know, I would say that because there's a lot of talented outside too. I would prefer not to just make it only village residents, because but that's,
Well, you know, like I was saying, there's certainly a level of expertise here, and, you know, I'm not really sure we're gonna be able to garner enough people in the village, but maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, we could say something like prefer village residents, or,
Could we request a majority? I mean.
We could,
Just
yeah.
because it's village grant funds that
it
they
is
would be
village grant
spending.
funds, yeah.
I think we have a model with the Historic Preservation Commission, because I think we allow 1 or 2 members to be outside
Yeah.
of the village, as long as they have, you know, a background in
Right,
historic preservation.
would that work, or,
Well, I think based on their expertise,
yeah,
yeah, they could be. Because I'm thinking there's some really strong folks like in Madison,
yeah.
and I hate for us to just to limit it only to village residents, but I certainly we can also have village residents too. Yeah, Derek.
Just to kind of tie those two things together, I agree with both what Phil and Randy are saying, somehow. But I think that the
That's a good
committee-
thing.
The committee needs to be broader than probably just the village. However, I would maybe change some of the duties of the committee language, where it says, the committee may have its members be the jury, or the committee may invite guest jurists to help in the final selection of submitted artworks. I might put that as required to invite guest jurists, and make it an odd number of village residents only. That way your committee can be, you know, the art-focused community that you're looking for, but the people that are actually having a say in the art is at least half village
Okay.
residents.
Yeah.
And
Because
then-
I'll give you an example. I'm jurying this week some artists from 14 South. I'm not part of 14 South, but I'm an artist. And so they invited me to be a guest jurist, so, yeah. Yeah, Jenna?
So I'm a strong believer in having village residents be on our village committees. And so I guess I would be the odd person out to suggest that we start, when we set out this committee, that we start looking just for village residents, similar to what we did with the DEI committee. And then should we find that there isn't enough applicants with the desired background, then we can look at extending it. I think like the quote that Derek had pulled out of here about adding people for the jury part, we can use that as a way to get experts in different mediums and from all over the counties that we're kind of targeting. But I feel pretty strongly that being a village committee, we should start out seeking village residents.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, Jenna, we can have the committee be village residents, but you would be okay if they asked somebody to jury who was outside?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
okay.
Oh,
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah,
I'm all right with that.
Yeah,
I agree with Jen.
All right.
Yeah, I like that.
all right, yeah, Mike?
Just a suggestion on how to proceed. I would suggest you split the language for forming the committee out into an ordinance and get that before us
That's-
as soon as possible.
So Martin, what do we need first?
So
Do
we
we
can
need
start filling that.
do we need the policy to be able to send out the call to artists?
Yeah, we'll have to, I mean, I think you're right, Mike. I think we could take out the committee piece of it and put it into our ordinance format. We were gonna have to do that regardless. And we can start that. We can do that first and then come back and do the policy
Yeah,
later.
Continue to hammer out the policy.
Yeah,
and
because
stuff,
one of the things,
Cause we can do this in parallel.
because you figure we got to give the artists probably at least a month to do a proposal.
Right,
And so if we want to sort of keep moving
right.
in that direction.
Yeah.
Okay,
So this way we can get the
Yep.
ordinance up next week.
then we can do it,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, thanks, everybody. I'm not an expert, but thank you for all the comments. Anybody else, any last comments? So I think we kind of know what to do next. Okay, thank you. All right. Can we go to G, future agenda items? This item gives the board members the opportunity to place items and new business on a future agenda for discussion. Anybody have anything that they would like to bring forward? Not seeing anything, okay. Not tonight, all right. All right, let's go to 10, reports of village officers. 10A is village administrator report. Martin had that in the packet for us. Unless you want to say anything, Martin, you're good?
Unless there's
Okay.
any question.
Yep. 10B is police chief activity report and training. That was in the report, chief, and I think we appreciate to be able to see all the trainings and things that are being done, but if you want to say anything?
Yeah, if it's okay, I'll just briefly
Yeah.
speak. First of all, I apologize that April's getting to you this late, but we have been in significant crunch trying to prepare for the mock assessment, which we've now gone through, and now we're preparing for the full assessment for accreditation. Just to highlight, April was a busy month for us, but more busy as it relates to more of the, I'd say, violent crime. Right away, April 1st, I would say that's certainly one I would highlight as a case we handled. Some of you may have seen it in the news. It was a standoff we had. A male adult armed himself with a long gun and was pointing it at neighbors while he was intoxicated and making threats. One of our officers, Officer Navarro, actually negotiated with that individual for 3 hours, talking with somebody who's intoxicated and in a level of that sort of violence for 3 hours and managing to end that situation safely. That's some amazing work. And then, ultimately this wasn't released in the press release, but now after everything has been resolved, just to highlight two loaded weapons, an unloaded rifle, over 2,500 rounds of ammunition, miscellaneous firearm parts, and over $3,000 of illegal drugs were located in the residence. It lists what kind of drug, but just for those that don't recognize, that terminology is essentially shrooms. And that was a significant amount, and it was within 1,000 feet of a park. So to have this end the way it did was certainly speaks to Officer Navarro's performance. And just recently, she received an award for that. I'm sure all of you have read the rest of these calls. Just to highlight, because this certainly stuck out to me, last year in April, we had 1,101 calls for service. In 2022, we had 782. What I can tell you is, in April, we didn't have adequate amount of staffing. So you're going to see those numbers dropped the most in your proactive work, so that would be your traffic stops and your suspicious area. So officers pull case numbers when they notice something suspicious, they'll document it. It may seem pretty minor at the time. They don't really understand the full complexity of it, but they say, you know, something that seems suspicious. And then the following morning, we find out that we had 20 theft from auto cases. That's just pieces of information our investigators can now look at, and that's actually helped us solve some cases. With the training list, I'm happy to take any questions on that too. Everything in red is material you have not seen yet. There is some duplication of training in the patrol spreadsheet versus the school resource spreadsheet, because we're tracking that in the moment. And at the time, the school resource officer was not an SRO. They were actually on patrol, working patrol, but we have to count that because that's the time that they're spending off the road working on those that training material. So that's why you're gonna see that duplicate. It will no longer happen because the SRO is now keeping that tally as a separate sheet, and it's off our main training list. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Anybody? Anything?
There's a lot there. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I hope to catch up soon on my activity reports too.
Thank you for putting that together.
Okay, thank you, Chief. All right, let's go to 10C, which is Finance Director Report. Status of 2022 General Fund Budget as of June 30th. Lisa had a report in the packet. Lisa, any questions for Lisa, or Lisa, anything to say to us?
If anybody has any questions, I can address those. Otherwise, I don't really have any additional inputs than whatever we see in the report.
All right, Mike and then Amanda.
Any concerns you have, Lisa?
At this point, not really. I mean, the department heads do a really good job managing their budgets, so I'm not concerned at this point, but we'll see how the rest of the year plays out with the Carlson Detman salary survey, whatever that shows. And hopefully we have enough money in contingency to cover starting the adjustments this year. So that's the hope anyway.
And if not,
Amanda.
maybe next year? Or
Yeah, well, like
what
Martin
would-
said earlier, yeah, depending on the amount of the adjustments, they may
Okay.
need to be phased in over a couple of years.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, that was he took my question
All right.
initially.
Anybody else? Okay, Lisa, thank you.
It's okay.
10D is Village Department Head Staff or Consultant Comments. All right, Jennifer.
I just want to share that the library construction project went out for public bid today, so you can expect to see that on your October 3rd agenda. I have a memo in your packet for next week talking about that step and then the subsequent steps in accordance with the memorandum of understanding that we have. Just want to remind you, we did have 2 cost estimates done, and so that we did everything we can to align the project plans with the cost estimates. And fingers crossed, we have better luck than the J.C. Park concession stand.
Yes. Okay. All right, 10E is Village Board Comments. Anybody have anything? Yes, Jenna?
I just, this popped in my head today as I was reviewing everything for tonight's meeting, that we've been doing so much incredible work around the village, and I just wanted to say thank you, staff, because it feels like it's kind of going at lightning pace, and I know that puts a lot of work on y'all's shoulders, so thank you.
All right. All right, 11, announcements, miscellaneous business, items are for discussion. 11A, upcoming meetings and events. That was in our packet as well from Martin. And how about 12, adjournment? Amanda?
Motion.
All right, second by Jenna. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you. What did you say, 7:30?
See, he should never agree.
6 minutes to 7.